Welcome everyone to the last day of the conference. I hope you all were able to join us at the social last night. We had a really good time. I want to welcome you to our session on building a restoration plan using community science applications. I have here with me Cam McNutt. Cam's been with the Division of Water Resources / Water Quality for 21 years. He develops the State Water Quality Assessment Report and tracks implementation of various water quality programs in North Carolina. Current efforts include developing online and field-based tools and workflows to streamline water resource restoration planning efforts. So Cam, I'm gonna hand it over to you and let you get started. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Welcome to the front of my house. I wish we were in person, but maybe next time around we'll see each other live. So what I'm going to talk about today is kind of a new effort that we have in the Division of Water Resources to basically move from a paper-based restoration plan into an online or map-based, heavily geospatial concentrated restoration plans that are much more accessible to professionals, stakeholders, and just ordinary citizens that are living in these watersheds. So I'm going to start with some real basics here. Basically, what's happened since civilization has arrived, wherever they have arrived, when they have arrived, water quality has gone downhill. Now, our current conditions, we have a line established by the Clean Water Act that says when water quality is okay and when it's not okay. And currently, we have about 1,200 waters in North Carolina that are on what's called the 303D list or the impaired waters list. Now, under the Clean Water Act, Division of Water Resources is required to address those through some sort of restoration plan. And we currently have our 2020 list out for public review. There's a few more waters on it than there were in 2018. If you do a web search, you'll be able to find all the information to review that and take a look at some of the maps associated with that. All the little red lines you see on this map are those 1,200 or so water bodies that are impaired right now for various things from ecological integrity, low dissolved oxygen, algal blooms, closed shellfish harvesting waters, pathogens. There's probably 50 or 60 different parameters that are affecting these various water bodies. So we have to build plans to address all of these. So we're required to do these restoration plans to meet Clean Water Act goals, and we're also required to implement them. DWR is the lead agency in this, but we also work a lot with other DEQ agencies, as well as DOT, forestry, soil, and water conservation, and a lot of our federal partners as well as universities. And increasingly, we're working very closely with local governments since they're the ones most likely to have to do a lot of the implementation to fix these impaired water bodies. One of our biggest problems, and everyone has this problem, is we do not have enough staff to address 1,200 water bodies in the 8 to 13-year time frame that's required in the Clean Water Act. And actually, a lot of the water bodies that we're working on right now have been on the 303D list since at least 1998. So we're a little bit behind schedule. In order for us to do this in-house, and we have basically committed to EPA that we would do a certain number of these in-house in DWR, but we got to make it really easy for us to do this. And by easy, I mean it needs to be cheap, both in manpower and in accessibility. We need to be able to have mid-level GIS users be able to build and maintain these plans. We also need to be able to include a lot of different stakeholders. Some of them I mentioned earlier. We're increasingly trying to get community folks and groups involved in these plans because it'll ultimately make them more successful. We've got to be transparent so everyone can see what the process is. This is not like a rule-making process, so it's really voluntary. We need to be adaptive so that we can incorporate new technologies as they come online, add new data sets, which is a real plus of being the geospatial platform. You don't have to open up a giant 3-ring binder and slide a few pages in there. You just add a new data set. And most importantly, we need to get people involved from a very young age. A lot of these plans have a time horizon that goes over 50 to 60 years. That's how hard it is to restore some water bodies once they become impaired. So we came up with this model, and don't worry, I'm not going to explain this. I'll just tell you that we have a watershed here in the middle. That's my model of a watershed. There's water in the watershed. And that is basically serving as the bookcase to house all of these different documents and also to start populating points with various pieces of information associated with all of these different tools that we've been developing in-house for both more professionally and trained people for project development tools. And then I'm going to focus mostly on these kind of 6 applications that we built that require very little training and people can use right outside of the bag. Almost all of these applications are either running in the geodatabase or most of them are running through Survey 123 that they can use online in a browser window, or they can download the app and use it on their phone. We're hoping most people will use this in the field on their handheld devices. So this was a slide of what a watershed action plan looks like, but I'm going to try to go live here and see if you can see what I've got here. Colleen, have confirmation that I was able to change that window over?
Yep, we're seeing it.
Okay, good to go. So what we have is your basic story map, and it's configured to focus in on a single watershed. However, if we zoom out, this is part of the easy part. We have only 3 or 4 base maps that are being custom configured inside of these plans. And you can see where the other plan areas are here in Raleigh, Wilson. There's 3 on the coast and there's a couple out west. So that was kind of the ease part of only having to keep up with data on 3 different sets of maps. And of course, we have a lot of textual elements down here. Talk about source assessment, put all these nice little infographics in there and customized GIS data sets. So we're providing a bunch of the GIS data automatically built into these applications from the DEQ side. But if local governments or if project coordinators want to add more data sets, we can easily do that as well. And you can see, so not all of our plans have riparian assessments, but this particular one did. And it's got a good little graphic over here that people can look at to see what riparian buffers look like. And, you know, red usually bad, green's pretty good. One of the other components that we've added is a direct tie-in to our StreamWatch program. I'm going to pop this window open. And this is kind of, we have 2 different approaches to get into these plans. One is through my branch, modeling and assessment branch, which is a more highly technical, much more regulatory oriented way, really for professionals to interact on that side. And then through our environmental education program, we have kind of this entry level page that kind of walks you through, hey, do you want to be in StreamWatch? Here's some things that you can do. And basically it increases their capacity to get involved in watershed planning as they kind of do these different activities. Pop over to another plan. Here's the Walnut Creek plan. We're not zoomed in. And this is a little bit slower, but these are built into all of our plans, these last 3 tabs. And they are focused on showing the results of all those tools that I was pointing at earlier. Some of them are to identify sources. Some are to identify and prioritize watershed improvement projects. Others are tools that help you look at the finances of the projects, to kind of weigh projects against each other. Garbage truck is 10 feet behind me, sorry about that. And we have a few other tools that just help communities do kind of some guided work, prioritize the different components in their area and the projects that they want to be involved with. This is a application, so you can, you know, people can see what's turned on. They can turn on and off a bunch of other layers. We have useful data sets on here, like we have City of Raleigh stormwater on one of them, and we have the parcels, floodplain hazard areas, a lot of things that people need to look at to kind of orient themselves to their area and help prioritize their needs. So you can see we've had people that are busy here I'm going to zoom into one area where we've had some successful. So these little round dots here are prioritized sources, which are basically, they've been populated by various people. Now, I was with them on this one, but they just ask you a couple questions and take a picture. So you can see in this example, the street is draining down into this pipe, which has been discharging into a creek. And they have then, since then, proposed several different projects. There are these diamonds here, and they actually were able to use this information to get funding to implement those projects, which is exactly what we want to do. Now I'm going to hop back into the presentation. Oops. Oh, I'll have to go this way, I guess. Okay, presentation is back on, but it's doing that fun PowerPoint thing where it shows it in 10 different screens. So let me just click through here. Yeah. Let me show you what the apps look like. I just have some screenshots here to try to make that as big as I can. So we have two surveys that are related to trash, and I've got these scrolled down a little bit, so you're seeing kind of the meat of the survey, not the introductory information. One of them is for going out and surveying where the trash is. If you've ever been on a stream walk with people before, you've noticed that you'll get 10 people, they divide up in different reaches of a creek, and 6 people come back with half a bag of trash, and then 2 people stand in one spot for 4 hours and fill up 40 bags. So this is a way for people to go scout out exactly where the trash is and where it's heaviest, so you can divvy up your resources a little bit better. It also asks you questions about the safety and accessibility of the site, so you can decide whether maybe it needs to be an all-adult trip, or maybe the Boy Scouts can go out there, or whatever the case may be. And then the trash tracker, even easier, you basically end up taking a picture of your group and the number of bags that you filled up and geolocating yourself, so we can figure out how much trash is picked up. And we have dashboards that we can go look at on all these tools to see what the level of activity is. Another one, this requires a little bit more training. These are more aimed probably at, I'm going to say, like high school and college students that have a somewhat knowledgeable teacher. Basically, what you're doing here is looking at the ecological health of the stream, and habitat survey. Now, these are not heavy-duty ecological surveys like you get from professionals that work in Division of Water Resources, but they give you a pretty good qualitative idea about what stream health is based on the kinds of aquatic insects that are living in the stream. And it does the math for you, gives you a score, and then you'll see it pop up here. And then importantly, we can see that pop up as well. So not only do we know kind of what the stream health is, but we also know that we've got some interested people out there. So being able to see these, where people are using these tools, gives us an idea about where people are interested in actually getting engaged in doing watershed work. Now, I stole these from various sources. The Isaac Walton League had this one on paper, and they have some training materials that go with this. I put it into an app. And then the Georgia Adopt a Stream has a habitat survey, which is similar to the macroinvertebrate survey, such as kind of looking at the physical condition of the stream for various different groups of parameters. It's qualitative, but again, when people get out there, they'll be able to see with their own eyes what healthy streams look like and which ones don't. So one of the things that you really have to get people to do is go out to an area that's undisturbed and look at a healthy stream, so then they'll know what an unhealthy one looks like. But we're hoping that people using these apps will be able to make that assessment, and then if you've got kids doing it, they can go home and tell their parents they've learned something about stream health in their local watersheds. Source Tracker, we've got 2 versions of this. I'm showing the SCIPS Pro version, and that's for Source Conveyance Information Tracking System. And we have the kind of the source tracker version, which is for the citizen science or community science folks, and then only ask you a couple of the questions at the top, like what type of conveyance is it, and what are the main types of land use upstream of that source. So whether it's parking lots or agriculture or whatever the case may be. In the pro version, which requires a little bit more training, you got to know a little bit about hydrology to determine what the strength of the source and conveyance together are. So it asks you questions about the last time it rained, whether the pipe is flowing, and then there's a whole set of examples in the training material about how to assign a strength to it. So a strong source is one that is probably really impacting the water resource, like a pipe that whenever it rains, tons of water comes out of it, or trash, or mud, or whatever the case may be. So that when these show up in our maps, we'll be able to see these red dots. Pop one back up here. We did one not too long ago over on the Dix Park campus. And we got a bunch of red pipes. Now, of course, this little stream, someone decided to build a railroad track on it years ago. So it might be hard to recover the upper part of this stream, but maybe if we can treat these sources and then be able to do restoration here along the farmer's market, we can have a nice publicly available restored stream. So again, this was 5 signal strength, so really strong. Our opinion that this one is really causing a problem, and it's double-barreled culvert here. It's draining several roads, and one of the things that we like to do is a confirmation trip, and that's basically going out when it's raining to see what's happening with these pipes. And when we went back out during a rainstorm, these pipes were running full, so the creek was hydraulically overloaded, to say the least. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is one of our dashboards. So this is the SCITS Pro dashboard. One of the things that I have to do in some of these more regulatory planned watersheds is I have to report to EPA on activity that's going on in these watersheds. So these dashboards that are just automatically generated from Survey 123 are really helpful. So I can go in and quickly look by date to see who's doing what, and most importantly for me to see who's doing the work. So that's a really nice thing about these dashboards. And I can see we've got 123 records, which is good, considering that we've had COVID going on this year, but we've had a lot of activity. You can see when one of these plans kicked off, and you can see when we had some more activity when I nudged a few people. So I can usually call some people and say, hey, have you guys done anything in a while? And then next thing I know, I start seeing blips showing up. One thing you really need to consider when you're putting these applications together is what kind of information do you want to see on your dashboard? So that's how you can guide your questions. And more drop downs, of course, are better to kind of standardize things. And I would say we're in testing mode for most of these. So have a lot of people that have both been trained, and then we have just a lot of other users that are out there. Our environmental education component, we have a lot of people that are just going out to streams and taking a picture, and that's a good start. So what we'll do, hopefully we need to have a full field season where people can get out and actually use these tools. We have 7 plans that are underway right now. And by underway, now the way that we're approaching these plans is that they're always underway. You never, stamp it and sign a bunch of paper, stack it up on a shelf and say you're done. The idea is that these are continuously implemented plans. So you want to continuously have people identifying sources, identifying watershed improvement projects, getting funding for those, implementing them, and then using some of those other tools that I didn't show you guys to basically show that the projects that you're doing are improving water quality and community health. And that, I'll pop up over here and go to questions.
All right, everyone, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them into the chat now, and we'll go ahead and ask Cam. Cam, I had one question while we're waiting for people to type their questions into the chat. The trash density app that you showed, you had two of them on there. Was one of them for DEQ to go out there or DWR, sorry. And the one that had a trash density, that seemed like a little bit more of something where you needed to know what the qualifications were for each category. Is that something that DWR is filling out?
No, we have a little instruction manual. It's qualitative, but it basically says when you hold your camera out, if you can only see trash, that's high density.
Okay.
Versus if you're only, it's kind of like, if you can walk out of there with your phone in one hand and all the trash you saw in another hand, then that's light.
Okay.
So our little training material actually kind of walks you through that, because it is really meant for the people that do adopt a stream, those signs around where people adopt a stream. It's really meant for those folks to go out kind of ahead of their cleanup date and scout it out so they can figure out who needs to go where.
Got it. Great. So Scott Gregory has asked, does the web app include a way to add existing projects and a monitoring component? He said, we're involved in Adopt a Catch Basin and disconnected impervious surface projects in Asheville in Western North Carolina, and would be good to access these projects and status, to add these projects and status to the app.
We are working on a way to do that, but right now we're asking folks that are involved in planning to try to go in, and it's not a lot of information that we're putting on there. Now, all of these apps, you can add attachments. So we have some of these watershed improvement projects where people have actually uploaded engineering specs onto so when you click on it, you'll actually get an engineering diagram of what the implementation is going to look like. So hopefully that we can add back projects, but right now we're asking people if they can to go back and populate, say, the last 3 or 4 years of projects that they've done as completed projects. There is a thing that asks you whether a project is completed or proposed. And proposed projects are those that it's not just we want to do it, it's like we have a plan and we're seeking funding. So it's pretty much one that you're really looking for funding for. And some of those other tools that I mentioned, I didn't really talk about. They require a little more training, but one of those is to do a before and after assessment at the project site. It's not monitoring in the water, you're doing an assessment of several different components of the landscape where you've implemented your project. So very local level monitoring. And we have another one that is an economic evaluation tool, and it basically, you go through the tool and it tells you what your return on investment is for various projects. So you can kind of compare projects in dollars.
That's really cool.
So it monetizes. That's a whole other presentation.
Yeah.
That's a WRI presentation.
So Allison Weekly has asked, hello, Allison, it's been a while.
Hello, Allison.
We're revamping our community engagement program, AKA Stream Team. And this would be a great platform to use. How would we get started in setting this up for a watershed?
The tools you can use anywhere statewide, and they are available through the StreamWatch page. They actually have, all those ones, those 6 that I showed you, there's actually a version of those where they're all on the same survey and you don't have to open and close the different apps. You can just use the one that you want to, but it's all on the same survey. And that is through the NC StreamWatch page for people to get started. Now, if you want to initiate an actual watershed plan for impaired water bodies, then you would contact me and we can talk about timing, and there's a lot of other components that go into that. And it depends on how strong the project lead is. Like when we're working with the COGS, they basically do everything and just tell me how to put it into the story map. So if I'm doing it, then I have to get some resources in-house and find out what my level of effort is going to be working with local governments. So contact me for the formal planning process. NC StreamWatch if you just want to get something started using the tools.
Awesome. So that is it for what we have so far in the chat. If anybody else has any other questions, please get them in there and we'll get these answered before we're finished here. But I want to thank everybody for coming. We have a session coming up right after this. So please go ahead and check your calendars and see what you'd like to go to next, and go ahead and sign up for that. We have another question that just came up here. Brian Burrell asked, does the EPA have any computer systems or forms that existed before the creation of this survey that you had to use to submit data? If so, how did you incorporate the survey to enter data into that website or form? i.e., did you use the Survey 123 report generator or create a new form, or do you use Survey 123 to collect data and still have to transfer to the EPA in other ways?
We're still working on exactly what those reports will look like with EPA, but basically what I've done so far is have a Zoom call with them and show them the survey dashboard, and they're like, "Oh, great!" And they say, "Yeah, look at all those dots were put in last year. They're doing something. Good to go." So it's not a real. Most of these plans that we're doing are voluntary plans, which they're, from legal perspective, it's really on us to show that activity is taking place. There's 4 or 5 of these plans that are regulatory commitments, and those are usually being run formally by municipal stormwater programs and as part of an ordinance. So that's how those are kept up with. But I'm using the same tools for their reporting, so I don't want to have to go back and forth to 2 different types of tools to do the reporting. And I do have to upload data to a national database, and that is really kind of a checkbox on whether or not we've done something. Like you saw several places where it said category 5. If we change that category, then there's a formal approach that we have to take. And category changes when these plans are initiated. So it goes from an impaired water body to an impaired water body that someone's working on. And there's a big difference in Clean Water Act legal ramifications between those 2 things, even though the water quality is about the same.
Awesome. So Ryan Davenport and Jack Drost said, great presentation and thank you. So, all right, everyone, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you at the next sessions and enjoy the rest of your conference.